The scanner beeped 3 times, and that was when everything went wrong. Danny Reeves had been eating a sandwich when the patrol ship locked onto his vessel. He wasn't worried at first. The Wanderer was a small cargo hauler, legally registered, carrying mining equipment to a frontier colony. He had done this run 40 times before. Inspections happened. They were boring, routine, and forgettable. He wiped crumbs from his shirt and opened the airlock. 6 aliens stood on the other side. 3 of them were Ethoran, tall and thin with pale blue skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on their faces. 2 were Mordal, shorter but heavily built, with gray skin that looked like stone. The last one was a species Danny didn't recognize, covered in soft white fur with ears that twitched constantly. The one in front wore a commander's insignia. She was Ethoran, and her voice came through a translator clipped to her collar. "Human vessel Wanderer, I am Commander Zylvith of the Galactic Peacekeeping Alliance. We are conducting a routine cargo inspection. You will comply." Danny nodded. "Sure, come on in, I've got nothing to hide." He led them through the narrow corridors of his ship. The Wanderer wasn't pretty, but she was reliable. Danny had bought her with 10 years of savings and fixed her up himself. Every dent and scratch told a story. The aliens moved carefully, ducking under pipes and stepping over loose cables. They seemed uncomfortable in the cramped space. Danny guessed their ships were probably much nicer. "Cargo hold is through here," he said, opening a heavy door. The hold was packed with crates, all marked with colony destination codes. Danny had loaded them himself 3 days ago. Picks, shovels, drilling equipment, construction supplies. Everything a new mining settlement needed to get started. Commander Zylvith gestured to her team. They spread out and began opening crates, scanning the contents with handheld devices. Danny leaned against the wall and waited. This part usually took about 20 minutes. Then they would thank him for his cooperation, sign a clearance form, and let him go. One of the Mordal soldiers pulled open a crate and froze. He said something in his own language. It sounded like rocks grinding together. The translator didn't catch it, but the tone was clear. Alarm. Commander Zylvith moved quickly to his side. She looked into the crate. Her 4 eyes went wide. "Human," she said slowly, "what is this?" Danny walked over and looked. Inside the crate sat a chainsaw, still in its factory packaging. Next to it were spare chains, oil, and a maintenance kit. "That's a chainsaw," Danny said. "For cutting wood, trees, you know." The commander stared at him. Then she pulled out her scanner and pointed it at the chainsaw. The device beeped rapidly and a red light flashed. "This item matches our weapons database," she said. "Classification, serrated assault blade with motorized acceleration, threat level severe." Danny blinked. "What? No, it's just a chainsaw for lumber." But the soldiers weren't listening. They were opening more crates now, moving faster. One of them pulled out a nail gun and nearly dropped it when his scanner screamed. "Rapid-fire projectile launcher." Another found the hydraulic jack. "Hydraulic crushing device." The crowbars came next. "Blunt force trauma instruments." Then the pickaxes. Piercing weapons designed for armor penetration. Danny watched in disbelief as his entire cargo was laid out on the floor. The aliens stood around it like they had uncovered a secret arsenal. Every scanner flashed red. Every device beeped warnings. "This is a mistake," Danny said. "These are tools, construction equipment, mining gear, they're not weapons." Commander Zylvith turned to face him. Her expression was hard. The soldiers behind her raised their guns. "Human Danny Reeves," she said formally. "You are under arrest for the illegal transport of military-grade armaments. You will be detained pending tribunal." "Tribunal for what? I'm delivering supplies to miners." "These items are classified as weapons under galactic law. No civilian vessel is permitted to carry them without military authorization." Danny opened his mouth to argue, but 2 soldiers grabbed his arms. They were strong, stronger than they looked. "You don't understand," he said as they pulled him toward the door. "Those are everyday tools, every human has them. They're in garages and sheds all over Earth. Commander Zylvith followed behind him. Her voice was cold. Then your species has much to answer for. Danny was dragged through the airlock and onto the alien ship. The corridors here were wide and clean, nothing like his cramped little hauler. Crew members stopped to stare as he passed. Word was already spreading. They brought him to a holding cell and pushed him inside. The door sealed. With a hiss, through the small window, Danny could see his ship floating in space, still connected by the docking tube. Everything he owned was on that ship. His tools, his clothes, his father's old watch. And apparently, an arsenal of deadly weapons. He sat down on the cold bench and put his head in his hands. This had to be a joke, some kind of misunderstanding. He would explain everything at the tribunal, show them how the tools worked, and they would let him go. They had to, because the alternative was spending the rest of his life in an alien prison for the crime of carrying a chainsaw. 3 guards escorted Danny down a long corridor. Their boots echoed against the metal floor. Nobody spoke. Danny had spent the night in the holding cell, sleeping badly on the thin mattress. No one came to explain what would happen next. No one answered his questions. He had counted the ceiling tiles until he lost track. Now they brought him to a room he hadn't seen before. The door was thick, reinforced. Above it, alien letters spelled something he couldn't read. The door slid open, and Danny's stomach dropped. It was an armory. Weapons lined the walls. Guns, blades, devices he couldn't identify. Display cases held items that looked ancient and dangerous. This was where the ship stored its deadliest equipment. And there, in the center of the room, sat a metal table. On that table lay his tools. The chainsaw, the nail gun, the hydraulic jack, the crowbar, the pickaxe, the industrial drill, even the simple hammer and the box of screwdrivers. Everything had been removed from his cargo and arranged like evidence at a crime scene. Commander Zylvith stood behind the table. 3 other officers flanked her. Their faces were grim. "Sit," she said, pointing to a chair. Danny sat. The guards took positions by the door. He was trapped. "Do you know why we brought you here?" the commander asked. "Because you think my tools are weapons." "They are weapons. Our scanners confirm it. Our databases confirm it. There is no doubt." She picked up a tablet and began reading. Item 1, serrated assault blade with motorized acceleration, capable of cutting through bone, muscle, and light armor in seconds. Used in close combat by species classified as extremely dangerous. She pointed at the chainsaw. Item 2, rapid-fire projectile launcher. Fires metal spikes at high velocity. Effective range 30 meters. Can penetrate standard body. Armors. The nail guns. Item 3, hydraulic crushing device. Generates over 10 tons of force. Designed to destroy vehicles, break defensive positions, and crush enemy soldiers. The hydraulic jack. Danny listened as she continued down the list. Each tool had been assigned a military classification. Each one had been analyzed for its killing potential. The crowbar was a blunt trauma implement. The pickaxe was an armor-piercing melee weapon. Even the screwdrivers were listed as precision stabbing instruments. When she finished, she set down the tablet. Human Danny Reeves, you were found transporting military-grade weapons without authorization. Under galactic law, this is punishable by life imprisonment. In some systems, it carries a death sentence. Danny's mouth went dry. "Commander, please listen to me. Those aren't weapons, they're tools. I use them for work." "Work? What kind of work requires a motorized blade?" "Cutting trees, building houses, clearing land." She stared at him like he had spoken nonsense. Her 4 eyes blinked slowly. "You cut trees with this?" "Yes, we call it a chainsaw. Every lumberyard on Earth has dozens of them." The other officers exchanged glances. One of them, a Mordal with deep scars on his face, stepped forward. "You expect us to believe that your species uses combat weapons for manual labor." "They're not combat weapons, they're power tools. My grandfather had a chainsaw. My father had one. I've had one since I was 18. It's completely normal. Commander Zylvith leaned on the table. Her voice dropped low. Human, I have served the Peacekeeping Alliance for 40 years. I have inspected thousands of vessels. I have seen smugglers, pirates, and arms dealers. I know what weapons look like. She picked up the nail gun and held it carefully, like it might explode. This device fires metal projectiles. It has a trigger. It has a magazine. It is, by every definition, a gun. It's for building things. You use it to attach boards together, to make furniture, to construct walls. With a nail gun, it shoots nails, not bullets. The room went quiet. The officers looked at each other again. Danny could see the confusion on their faces. They weren't pretending. They genuinely didn't understand. "Commander," he said slowly, "what do your people use to build things?" She seemed caught off guard by the question. "We have construction drones, automated systems. Bonding agents, molecular welders. You don't use hand tools. Hand tools are primitive. We abandoned them centuries ago." Danny looked at the items on the table. His tools, his father's tools before that. Humans still use them. We use them every day. The chainsaw, the nail gun, the drill, they're not weapons. They're just part of life. Then your life is very different from ours. Maybe it is, but that doesn't make me a criminal. Commander Zylvith was silent for a long moment. She studied his face, searching for deception. Danny met her gaze and didn't look away. Finally, she spoke. "You will be given one opportunity to prove your claims. Tomorrow, under guard, you will demonstrate the function of each item. If you can show that they are tools and not weapons, the charges may be reduced." Danny let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Thank you, that's all I ask. But understand this, human." She leaned closer. "If this is a trick, if you use any of these items as weapons, my soldiers will kill you before you take a second breath." Danny nodded. "I understand." "Good, take him back to his cell." The guards pulled him to his feet. As they led him out, Danny looked back at the table one last time. Tomorrow, his life would depend on building something. He hoped he remembered how to use a nail gun. 12 soldiers surrounded Danny in a perfect circle. Each one held a weapon aimed at his chest. Their fingers rested on triggers, ready to fire at the first sign of threat. Danny tried not to think about it. He focused on the materials in front of him instead. They had brought timber from his cargo hold, real wood from Earth, meant for the colony's first buildings. Beside it sat metal pipes, bolts, and sheets of steel plating, everything a worker might need for a construction job. The armory had been cleared of its regular contents. Only his tools remained, laid out on the table like artifacts in a museum. Commander Zylvith stood at a safe distance, her arms crossed. Behind her, a crowd had gathered. Word had spread through the ship. Everyone wanted to see the human and his weapons. "You may begin," she said. Danny took a deep breath. He walked to the table and picked up the chainsaw. 12 guns followed his movement. He heard safeties click off. "Easy," he said. "I'm just going to start it. It's loud. Don't shoot me for the noise." He pulled the starter cord. The chainsaw roared to life. Several aliens jumped back. One of them shouted something in a language Danny didn't understand, but nobody fired. Danny carried the chainsaw to the timber pile. He selected a thick log about as wide as his waist. "This is how we cut trees," he said. He pressed the blade against the wood. The chainsaw bit in, sending sawdust flying. Within seconds, he had sliced clean through. The cut was smooth and straight. He turned off the chainsaw and held up the 2 pieces. "See, it's for cutting wood, that's all." The crowd murmured. Commander Zylvith said nothing, but her eyes were wide. Danny set down the chainsaw and picked up the nail gun. "This one puts pieces of wood together. Watch." He positioned 2 boards at a right angle. Then he pressed the nail gun against the joint and pulled the trigger. A sharp crack echoed through the room. The nail drove through both boards, binding them together. He did it again and again. Within minutes, he had assembled a simple frame, the skeleton of a small shelf. On Earth, we use these to build houses, Danny explained. A good worker can put up walls in a few hours with one of these. He moved to the hydraulic jack next. This one lifts heavy things. He positioned the jack under a cargo container that the soldiers had brought in. It weighed at least 2 tons. Danny pumped the handle, and slowly the container rose off the ground. We use these to fix vehicles, change wheels, lift equipment, nothing more dangerous than that. One by one, he demonstrated each tool. The drill made holes in metal. The crowbar pried apart stuck panels. The pickaxe broke up a chunk of concrete they had found somewhere. With each demonstration, the tension in the room dropped a little. Fingers moved away from triggers. Soldiers lowered their weapons slightly. They were beginning to understand. When Danny finished, he stood in the middle of his creations. The wooden frame, the lifted container, the drilled metal sheet, proof that these items built things instead of destroying them. Commander Zylvith approached slowly. She looked at the wooden frame, running her fingers along the joints. "This is remarkable," she said quietly. "The precision, the speed, you did this with such primitive equipment." "It's not primitive to us," Danny said. "It's just normal." A young Ethoran soldier stepped forward. He couldn't have been more than 20 by human standards. His name tag read Piv. "Sir," he said to Danny, "I have a question." "Go ahead." Piv looked at the tools on the table. His voice was soft, almost afraid. "What kind of environment requires such brutal implements for basic construction?" Danny paused. He thought about how to explain it. "Earth," he said simply. Piv blinked. "I don't understand what is special about Earth." "It's not special to us, it's just home. But the trees there are hard, the ground is tough, the weather is harsh. If you want to build something, you need tools that can handle it." Commander Zylvith had moved to a wall terminal. She was typing rapidly, pulling up information. "Human," she said without turning around. "What is the classification of your homeworld?" "What do you mean?" "Environmental classification, habitability rating." Danny shrugged. "I don't know, we just call it Earth." The commander found what she was looking for. She stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she turned around. Her face had gone pale. "Your homeworld," she said slowly, "is classified as a Category 7. The soldiers in the room shifted uncomfortably. Some of them looked at Danny with new eyes. "What does that mean?" Danny asked. Commander Zylvith walked toward him. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Category 7 is the highest danger rating we have. Extreme gravity, unstable tectonics, violent weather patterns, predator saturation, toxic atmosphere variations." She stopped in front of him. "We don't colonize Category 7 worlds, human. We don't even land on them. They are considered death worlds." Danny looked at the tools on the table. The chainsaw, the nail gun, the pickaxe. "Is that why these seem like weapons to you?" "Yes," Commander Zylvith said, "because on any other world they would be, but you," she shook her head slowly, "you use them to build shelves." The armory was silent. Every alien in the room stared at Danny like they had never truly seen a human before. And in a way, they hadn't. Someone had brought chairs into the armory. Danny sat in the center while aliens gathered around him like students in a classroom. The weapons on the walls seemed forgotten now. Everyone wanted to hear about Earth. "Tell us more," Commander Zylvith said. She had taken a seat directly across from him. Her tablet lay in her lap, recording everything. "About your world, about why you need these tools." Danny rubbed his face. He wasn't a teacher or a scientist. He was just a cargo hauler who had grown up on a farm, but he would try. "Where do I start?" "The beginning. What is Earth like?" Danny thought for a moment. "Earth is beautiful. Blue oceans, green forests, white mountains. From space it looks peaceful." "But it isn't." "No, not even close." He leaned forward in his chair. "On Earth the ground moves. We call them earthquakes. The planet's surface is broken into pieces, and those pieces shift and grind against each other. Sometimes whole cities fall down in minutes. An Ethoran officer raised his hand. Your buildings collapse from ground movement. Why don't you simply stabilize the foundations? We try, but the forces involved are massive. Earthquakes release more energy than nuclear bombs. You can't stop them. You can only build strong and hope for the best. Danny picked up the crowbar from the table. After an earthquake, rescue teams use these to dig through rubble, to find survivors. Sometimes they work for days, pulling apart broken buildings piece by piece. He set the crowbar down. Then there's the weather. We have storms called hurricanes, walls of wind that spin across oceans and hit coastlines at 200 kilometers per hour. They flatten everything in their path. Trees, houses, power lines, gone in hours. How do you survive such events? Piv asked. We rebuild every time. The storm passes and we start over. We cut the fallen trees. He nodded toward the chainsaw. We clear the debris. We put up new walls. It's what we do. Commander Zylvith was typing notes rapidly. What else? Floods, rivers overflow and swallow entire towns. Droughts dry up farmland until nothing grows. Forest fires burn millions of acres. Volcanoes erupt and bury cities in ash. Danny paused. And that's just the planet. We haven't even talked about the animals. The room grew quieter. Even the soldiers at the door leaned in to listen. Earth has predators, big ones, bears that weigh 1,000 pounds, cats that can run faster than ground vehicles, sharks that patrol the oceans with rows of teeth, snakes with venom that kills in minutes. He looked at the pickaxe. My grandfather used to carry one of these when he worked in the fields. Not for digging, for protection, in case something came out of the woods. A Mordal soldier spoke up. Your people work in fields where predators might attack. Someone has to grow the food. We can't all hide inside walls. Why not? Exterminate the predators. Danny almost laughed. We tried for thousands of years, but they adapt. They survive just like we do. Commander Zylvith set down her tablet. Her expression had changed. The suspicion was gone, replaced by something else, something like awe. Human Danny Reeves. I have served 40 years in the Alliance. I have visited hundreds of worlds. I have never encountered a species like yours. What do you mean? Most sapient species evolved on gentle worlds, stable climates, predictable seasons, few predators. They developed intelligence because they had time to think, time to grow, time to build civilizations. She gestured at the tools on the table. Your species evolved on a world that actively tried to kill you. Every day, every moment. And instead of dying, you built these, implements of survival, machines that let you fight back against your own planet. Danny shrugged. We didn't have a choice. It was adapt or die. But that's exactly it, Zylvith said. You chose to adapt, you chose to build, you chose to survive. She stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars drifted past in the darkness. When my ancestors reached the stars, they did it because they were curious. They wanted to explore, to learn, to meet other beings. It was an adventure. She turned back to face him. When your ancestors reached the stars, they did it because staying on Earth was dangerous. Space was just another hostile environment to conquer, another challenge to overcome. Danny thought about the early space programs, the rockets that exploded, the astronauts who died, the missions that failed. We lost a lot of people getting there, he said quietly. And yet you kept going. Of course we did. That's what humans do. The Armory was silent. Aliens looked at Danny with new understanding. He wasn't a criminal or a smuggler. He was something else entirely. A survivor. A builder. A human. Commander Zylvith returned to her seat. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. I think I understand now. The tools, the strength, the stubbornness, it all comes from Earth. Everything we are comes from Earth, Danny agreed. The good and the bad. Then I have one more question. She leaned forward. If these are just your everyday tools, what do you use as actual weapons? Danny went very still. He hadn't expected that question. Every eye in the armory fixed on Danny. The question hung in the air. Like smoke. If these are just your everyday tools, what do you use as actual weapons? Danny shifted in his chair. He had hoped they wouldn't ask. Some things were better left unsaid. That's complicated, he said. Simplify it. Danny looked around the room. These aliens had spent the last hour learning that Earth was a death world. They had accepted that humans evolved alongside predators and natural disasters. They had seen the tools humans used just to survive. What would they think when they learned the truth? On Earth, Danny began slowly, we have weapons that make these tools look like toys. Commander Zylveth leaned forward. Describe them. Guns, we have guns that fire metal projectiles at high speed, not nails, bullets, designed specifically to punch through flesh and bone. Like your nail gun. No, much worse. Our guns can kill from hundreds of meters away. Some can kill from kilometers away. We have rifles that shoot through walls, pistols small enough to hide in a pocket, machine guns that fire hundreds of rounds per minute. The aliens exchanged glances. The Mordal soldier named Brath stepped forward from his position by the wall. Per minute, how many rounds? Some models, 600, maybe more. Brath was silent for a long moment, then he spoke again. We have pulse rifles, plasma weapons, energy projectors. Our fastest weapon fires perhaps 60 shots per minute before overheating. Our weapons don't overheat, not like that. We just reload and keep firing. The room grew very still. Commander Zylveth's voice was careful. What else? Danny didn't want to continue, but they had asked. Explosives, grenades that you can throw by hand, missiles that fly themselves to targets, bombs that flatten entire city blocks. He paused. And then there are the big ones. Big ones. Nuclear weapons. We developed them about 80 years ago. A single bomb can destroy a whole city. The explosion creates a fire hotter than the surface of our sun, and afterward the area stays poisonous for decades. Nobody spoke, nobody moved. Danny watched their faces, horror, disbelief, fear. How many of these weapons does your species possess? Zylveth asked quietly. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. I don't know the exact number. Aimed at whom? Danny took a deep breath. Each other. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the hum of the ship seemed to fade. Brath walked slowly to the table. Where the tools lay, he picked up the pickaxe and studied it. His scarred face showed no expression. My people are warriors, he said. The Mordal have fought for 1,000 generations. We developed blades, then spears, then guns when we reached the stars. He set the pickaxe down gently. We have nothing like this. A tool for breaking rocks, a device that looks like a weapon but isn't. He shook his head. On my world, we never needed such things. Our rocks are soft. Our ground is easy to work. We built weapons only when we encountered enemies in space. He turned to face Danny. But your people, you built weapons to fight your own planet, and then you built even more terrible weapons to fight each other. Yes. Why? Danny struggled to find the words. Because we could, because we were afraid, because someone else had them so we needed them too. I don't know, I'm just a cargo hauler, I don't make the decisions. Brath studied him for a long moment. Then he asked the question everyone was thinking. If humans possess such terrible weapons, why haven't you conquered the galaxy? The question hit Danny like a punch. He had never thought about it that way before. We don't want to conquer anyone. Most of us just want to live in peace. Build things, raise families, maybe see some new places. But you could. Could what? Conquer, destroy. With weapons like those, you could burn entire worlds. Danny nodded slowly. Yeah, we could. Then why don't you? Because we know what war costs. We've seen it. We've lived it. For thousands of years, we fought each other over land and resources and ideas. Millions died, cities burned, entire civilizations collapsed. He looked down at his hands. We invented nuclear weapons and immediately realized we had built something too terrible to use. We came within minutes of destroying ourselves, multiple times, and somehow we survived. He looked up again. Humans aren't peaceful because we're weak. We're peaceful because we know exactly how dangerous we are. And we made a choice. We chose not to become monsters. The armory was silent. Commander Zylveth stared at Danny like she was seeing him for the first time. Brath stood motionless by the table. The young soldier Piv had tears in his eyes. Finally, Zylveth spoke. I believe I understand now. Your tools frightened us because we saw their potential for violence. But to you, they are just tools because you reserve your violence for things that truly matter. We tried, Danny said. We don't always succeed, but we try. Brath walked back to his position by the door. As he passed Danny, he stopped. I have served in 3 wars, he said quietly. I have killed enemies with my own hands. I thought I understood strength. He looked at the tools on the table one last time. I was wrong. 2 days had passed since the demonstration. Danny stood in the docking bay watching crew members load crates back onto the Wanderer. His cargo, his tools, all of it returned. Commander Zylveth approached from behind. Her footsteps were light, almost hesitant. Your ship is nearly ready, she said. You should be able to depart within the hour. Danny turned to face her. Thank you for listening, for giving me a chance to explain. I should be thanking you. These past days have been educational. She handed him a data chip. Danny looked at it, confused. What's this? New clearance codes. I've updated your ship's registration in our database. You won't be stopped for carrying standard equipment again. Danny took the chip. His throat felt tight. I appreciate that. They walked together toward the airlock where the Wanderer waited. The ship looked smaller next to the massive patrol vessel. Smaller, but still home. May I ask you something? Zylveth said. Of course. I've been thinking about what you told us, about Earth, about human weapons, about the choices your species has made. She paused. One thing still confuses me. What's that? Humans possess the power to destroy worlds. You have nuclear weapons. You have the technology for terrible violence. And yet when you joined the Galactic Alliance, you agreed to our restrictions. You follow our rules. You limit yourselves. She turned to face him fully. Why, with such power, why do you accept boundaries? Danny thought about the question. It was a good one. He had never really considered it before. Because power without control is meaningless, he said finally. Any fool can destroy things. It takes wisdom to know when not to. But surely some humans disagree. Surely some want to use that power. Of course they do. We've had leaders who wanted conquest, generals who dreamed of empire. We've had wars and atrocities and moments of terrible cruelty. He leaned against the wall of the docking bay. But we've also had people who stopped them, people who said no, people who built treaties and laws and systems to prevent the worst outcomes. It's an ongoing struggle, good against bad, hope against fear. And the good wins. Sometimes, not always, but enough. Zylveth was quiet for a moment, then she asked her final question. How do you know humans won't change? How can we trust that your peaceful choices today won't become violent choices tomorrow? Danny smiled sadly. You can't, not really. Trust is always a risk. He pushed off from the wall and faced her directly. But here's what I know. Humans didn't reach the stars because we were forced to. We reached them because we wanted to, because we looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there, because curiosity matters more to us than comfort. He gestured at the patrol vessel around them. When we met other species, we could have attacked. We had the weapons. We had the technology. We could have carved out an empire and called it destiny. But you didn't. No, we didn't, because we wanted something better. We wanted friends, not subjects, partners, not slaves. We made a choice. He held up the chainsaw, which he had been carrying to load onto his ship. This is a tool. It could be a weapon, but we choose to use it for building. That's what humans do. We take dangerous things and make them useful. We take power and aim it at problems instead of people. Commander Zylvith stared at the chainsaw. Then she looked at Danny. Something in her expression had softened. "I think I understand," she said quietly. "You are not peaceful despite your strength. You are peaceful because of it, because you know what you could become and you refuse to become it." "Something like that?" She stepped back and straightened her uniform. "Safe travels, human Danny Reeves. I hope our next meeting is under better circumstances." Danny laughed. "Me too. Maybe don't arrest me next time." "I'll consider it." He boarded his ship and sealed the airlock behind him. Through the window, he watched Zylvith return to her duties. Other crew members moved past, no longer looking at him with fear or suspicion. The Wanderer's engines hummed to life. Danny settled into the pilot's seat and began the departure sequence. Before he pulled away, his comm crackled. "Human vessel Wanderer, this is Commander Zylvith. I wanted you to know something." "Go ahead." "I've updated our weapons database. Your tools have been reclassified." "As what?" There was a pause. When she spoke again, he could hear the smile in her voice. "Human survival equipment, standard, non-threatening." Danny grinned. "That's more like it." "One more thing, I added a note to the file." "What does it say?" Another pause. "Approach with respect." The comm went silent. Danny sat back in his chair and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a colony was waiting for its tools. Miners needed picks. Builders needed saws. Settlers needed everything. And Danny was going to deliver. He engaged the engines and flew toward the light. Behind him, the patrol vessel grew smaller and smaller until it vanished among the stars. Just another day in the life of a human, building things in a universe that finally understood.